When you sit down and look at a Wednesday college basketball slate like this one, you can almost feel the rhythm of December hoops settling in. This is that point of the season where teams reveal who they really are, when the early season tune-ups fade away and the identity of every roster starts to crystallize. You know which programs can actually travel, which systems fall apart under pressure, which coaches make the right mid-game adjustments, and which rotations can't handle physicality. And on a slate like December 10th, the betting edges are often hidden in the details: pace mismatches, neutral site psychology, travel fatigue, rebounding profiles, shooting variance, and coaching history. So today on Beyond the Box Score, we're breaking down the top matchups with precision, looking at not just who should win, but why. Let's dive into the board with confidence and experience as we walk through the best plays on the slate. The first matchup brings us into a rare situation, a near pick-em between a MAC program and a Power 4 team, and yet the opening line immediately told the story. UMass sitting at plus 110 on the moneyline in a neutral site showdown against Boston College. Anytime you see a mid-major essentially lined as an equal against a struggling power conference program, you need to ask one question: is this a trap, or is the market sending a clear message? Here, the numbers absolutely support the UMass side. Boston College sits at 5-5 on the year and their resume looks thinner the deeper you look into it. They haven't played many good teams at all, and the flaws show up everywhere in their profile. They score just 70 points a game, they play at a bottom 30 pace, meaning they grind possessions down and try to shorten the game, and they shoot a brutal 29% from deep. Not only that, but they're a 68% free throw shooting team, which is often the difference maker in neutral site environments. BC's defense is the one area that looks decent on paper, but even those metrics are inflated because they haven't played a single explosive offense, and the pace they play at naturally depresses their opponents' scoring numbers. Meanwhile, UMass enters 6-3 with legitimately solid wins over Oregon State, Harvard, and Central Connecticut. Those aren't marquee wins, but they're real, tangible resume builders for a program still developing its identity. They score 78 points a game, they move the ball at a top 100 pace, and they shoot an efficient 46% from the field. The one statistical category they lose is rebounding, which makes sense under Frank Martin, who always builds big, physical front courts that play with a ton of energy down low. And when you trust Frank Martin's teams, it's usually because they show up in games exactly like this one. This is a neutral site game in Springfield, and while neither fan base is going to travel heavily, the lack of atmosphere often favors the more disciplined, better-paced team, which is UMass. Boston College's shooting numbers are too unreliable, their offense too limited, their pace too restrictive, and their interior presence too inconsistent to trust. UMass has better guard play, a more confident offensive rhythm, a head coach who thrives in gritty matchups, and a roster that executes with more consistency. Give me UMass plus 110 on the moneyline to start the slate. Next on the board is a game that feels eerily similar to the Penn State vs. Indiana matchup from earlier, a matchup where the superior roster, superior coach, and superior building all align with the same conclusion. Purdue at home, laying minus 18.5, gets Minnesota on the schedule at exactly the right time. Purdue is coming off a shocking home blowout loss to Iowa State by 23 points, one of the worst home defeats the program has ever suffered. In fact, it was the largest loss they've ever taken at home to a non-conference opponent in program history. When experienced veteran teams take an embarrassing loss like that, the next game tends to be violent. Matt Painter's squads don't get hit in the mouth often, and when they do, history shows they respond with aggression, physicality, and urgency, especially at Mackey Arena. Minnesota enters this game at 5-4 after beating Indiana at home by 9, but that victory loses value when you look at their full resume. Every road game they've played has resulted in a loss, including a 23-point loss at Missouri. Their neutral site tournament on the West Coast included losses to San Francisco, Stanford, and Santa Clara, three teams that Minnesota couldn't handle in any environment. Now they walk into Mackey for their first Big Ten road test under Nico Medved, who brings in a roster stitched together from transfers across the country but still trying to find chemistry. They shoot just 32% from deep and only 67% from the free throw line, two major red flags for a team that needs perimeter production to keep games competitive. And if you can't shoot consistently, you cannot survive at Mackey Arena, plain and simple. Purdue is 8-1 this season, and even though they just got blasted, this is a lineup full of veterans who know exactly what's required in a bounce-back spot. Braden Smith's decision-making, Kerr's interior presence, Oscar Clough's physicality, and their overall ability to shoot the ball at home makes them dangerous in this situation. The environment will be electric, opening Big Ten play at Mackey, fans roaring despite finals week, and a team desperate to make a statement. Minnesota has shown no ability to compete away from home, and Purdue has every motivational angle on their side with superior shooting, superior depth, superior coaching, and a building designed to swallow inexperienced teams whole. Purdue should control the pace, dominate the glass, win the interior battle, attack in transition, and bury Minnesota with sustained offensive pressure. Give me Purdue minus 18.5. Next, we hit the Delaware vs. George Washington matchup, a spot that screams fade Delaware from every angle. Delaware on the road this season has been flat-out awful. The simplest rule in betting this program is that when they leave their building, you fade them. And George Washington at home laying minus 21.5 fits the situation perfectly. Delaware is 2-6 on the year and 0-3 straight up on the road. Their only wins came against a D2 opponent, St. Peters, and UNCG, which means in terms of real competition, they've done absolutely nothing. They score just 69 points a game, they operate at a bottom 100 pace, they're one of the worst rebounding teams in the entire country, and their lineup is extremely undersized. They're also coming off a rivalry loss to Delaware State, in overtime, which is another program you absolutely cannot trust. Meanwhile, George Washington sits at 8-2 with both losses being respectable, a 1-point road loss to Murray State and a 6-point setback to MC at home. They score 92 points a game, play at a top 75 pace, shoot 51% from the field, and are a top 100 rebounding team. They also hold a major size advantage over Delaware and typically have one of the better home atmospheres among mid-majors. They can hang 90+ on weak defenses, and Delaware's is exactly that, a weak defensive team that lacks size, lacks pace control, and lacks any ability to string together stops. With the home court energy, the offensive firepower, and the rebounding edge, George Washington should overpower them from start to finish. Give me George Washington minus 21.5. Next, we get to the greasiest matchup of the slate, Maine vs. Boston University. Normally, fading Maine is as automatic as it gets because they are consistently one of the worst programs in Division I. And even though this matchup is not a favorite of mine, the numbers still point to Boston minus 7.5. Maine is 0-11 on the season and this marks their 6th straight road game. They score just 59 points per game, dead last in the entire country. They make only 6 3-pointers a game, ranking among the bottom 20 teams nationally. They shoot just 60% from the free throw line, making them the 5th worst free throw shooting team in America. They turn the ball over 15 times a game, and they also carry a bottom 100 defense. To add to the chaos, their head coach is on the ban list, which only adds more instability to an already broken program. Nothing in their statistical profile offers hope. Meanwhile, Boston University is 4-6 on the year, and while that doesn't sound impressive, their offense is legitimately strong. They score 76 points a game despite being the slowest-paced team in the country, a rare combination that tells you how efficient they are. They shoot 50% from the field and an elite 41% from three, a mark that ranks 5th in the entire nation. They make 10 threes a game and have far better spacing, ball movement, and shot selection than Maine. The question becomes, how is Boston losing games with numbers like this? And the answer is inconsistency, but even inconsistent teams handle disasters like Maine. Two slow teams meet here, but only one of them can score, only one can shoot, only one has structured offensive sets, and only one can control possessions. Even though it won't be my biggest play of the day, I still have to fade Maine. Give me Boston minus 7.5. Next, we've got Norfolk State and Baylor matching up, and from a betting perspective this one immediately screams pace, scoring, and a wide-open style that could get up and down quickly. For that reason, I'm going straight to the total and taking the over 146.5, a number that feels like it hasn't quite caught up to what Baylor has shown offensively so far. This Baylor team under Scott Drew hasn't necessarily had the most star-studded roster he has ever coached, but they've been doing exactly what well-coached teams do against mid-majors, imposing their will, pushing tempo, and running up points in a hurry. And when you look at Norfolk State's resume, the only high major they've faced this season was Arizona, and they surrendered 98 points in that game. Do I think Baylor gets all the way to 98? Probably not. Do I think Norfolk State could easily allow 88? Absolutely. Norfolk State enters this matchup at 4-6, and they're coming off a 1-point road loss to James Madison. They do score 79 points per game, and they play at a dead middle pace with a respectable 48% shooting number from the field. But they basically avoid the three-point shot entirely. They're a team that wants to attack the rim, draw contact, and earn free throws. The problem is that this style gets a lot tougher against a Baylor frontcourt that has real size and physicality. Add to that the fact that Norfolk State is one of the worst rebounding teams in the country, and the picture becomes clearer. If they miss inside, and they will, Baylor is going to own the glass and generate easy second-chance scoring opportunities. Baylor's profile speaks for itself at this point. They're 6-2, with losses to Memphis on the road by 7 and St. John's at a neutral site in a high-scoring 96-81 game. They average 88 points per game, and when they face mid-majors, they've consistently hit them with waves of scoring. They dropped 110 on Sacramento State, 91 on San Diego State, 81 against Creighton, 94 on Tarleton State, and 86 against UT Rio Grande Valley. This is not a one-off trend, this is who Baylor is right now. They shoot, they run, they stretch the floor, and they attack relentlessly. With everything pointing toward another offensive showcase and Norfolk State likely needing to push pace just to keep up, 146.5 feels too low, and the over becomes the right side to attack. The next game on the board comes with a very different type of energy, not pace, not scoring fireworks, but conviction and risk. It's the type of game where you feel either foolish or brilliant when it's over. I'm doubling down and stepping directly into the fire. Give me Princeton minus 2.5, a bet that absolutely terrifies me but one that I can't ignore. When you look at where the Ivy League stands this season, the conference desperately needs a moment where someone asserts themselves. If the Ivy wants to prove they're not one of the weakest conferences in the country, this is a spot where they have to show it. Princeton at home, laying only 2.5 to Merrimack, is a line that would have been at least double digits in the preseason. 12 or 13 was probably the accurate projection back then, yet here we are with a drastically reduced number. That tells you Princeton hasn't been playing well, but it doesn't change the fact that they're 3-0 at home, and they don't need a blowout. They just need to win by 3. Merrimack sits at 5-6, and they're riding a 3-game win streak, but those wins came over LaSalle, Fairfield, and Ryder. We already know what that means. Ryder has been one of the worst teams in the country, LaSalle is trending toward the basement of the A10, and Fairfield isn't scaring anyone. Meanwhile, Merrimack's recent road history is a pretty telling indicator of what they're capable of away. From home, they've lost to Hofstra by 20, Penn by 12, Tarleton State by 14, and South Dakota State by 9. Every time they've faced a competent mid-major on the road, they've been handled. They only score 65 points per game, play a bottom 30 pace nationally, and shoot 38% from the field. That's a tough profile to bring into an Ivy League home environment. Princeton doesn't look great at 3-9, but context matters. They've played a tough schedule, and even within their struggles, that perfect home record stands out. They're scoring 70 per game, shooting 42%, and most importantly, they carry a big advantage on the boards. And that matters because Merrimack enters this game as the second worst rebounding team in the entire country, and they've played nowhere near the level of physicality Princeton brings. When you're getting destroyed on the glass even against Fairfield, Ryder, LaSalle, and Tarleton, you're in major trouble stepping into Princeton's gym. If Princeton cannot cover this number, the entire Ivy League deserves to go straight back onto the ban list. But I believe they get it done. Princeton minus 2.5 is the play. Now let's move to the final main play before the almost bets, and this one brings another clear disparity. Charleston heads to South Florida, and there's no need to overcomplicate this. I'm taking USF minus 15.5, and everything about the matchup points in that direction. First off, I completely misspoke earlier, this is not Charleston Southern. This is Charleston, and unfortunately for them, they are extremely banged up. Their two best players are out for the season, and without those pieces, their offensive ceiling drops dramatically. USF is 5-4, and their record doesn't really reflect their quality. When we last saw them, they dismantled Utah State by 13, and they looked every bit like a team with real firepower, size, and discipline. They have the coaching edge, the size advantage, the pace advantage, and they're playing at home. Charleston sits at 4-5, and with their two best starters shut down for the year, Mr. Dean and Colby Duggan, their future is bleak. They score 73 points per game, but that number includes early games when they still had both starters active. They shoot 41%, make only 6 threes per game, and without their primary scorers, they simply don't have enough punch to hang with a USF team that plays at a top 10 pace nationally and puts up 90 points per game while making 9 threes per night. This is a terrible stylistic matchup for Charleston. They cannot keep up with the tempo, they cannot match the shot making, and they do not have the depth to survive on the road against a team this fast. I've got USF 102, Charleston 64, a blowout from start to finish. Now let's talk about the almost bets, the games that didn't quite make the official card but are worth mentioning. The first one is downright disgusting, UT Martin plus 9.5 at Sioux. I don't understand this line at all. What has Sioux done to deserve laying nearly double digits to anyone? This number feels wrong, it looks wrong, and it smells wrong. The only explanation would be injuries, likely one or more of UT Martin's European players being out, because otherwise this line is bizarrely inflated. Next, give me Colgate plus 11.5 at the Bonnies. I'm tired of this Bonnies team. Every time I fade them, they cover. Every time I think they're due to fall apart, they don't. So maybe the right play is the Bonnies just to spite the universe, but I'll stick to the logic. Colgate's a strong program, and 11.5 is a big number for a matchup like this. They're too well coached and too historically consistent to be catching that many points. Finally, Southern plus 2.5 at Texas State. Southern isn't bad, and they looked competitive against Texas earlier this season. They now stay in the same state, get a hotel, get comfortable, and face a Texas State team that isn't very good. If Southern shoots the ball well, and they usually do, they should be able to outscore Texas State on the perimeter and take this one outright. That wraps up the slate for today, and as always, this breakdown is built to help you see the matchups the way a bettor should, through pace, personnel, context, and environment. And before we close this out, if you're watching this on Beyond the Box Score, don't forget, every game has a story, every line has a reason, and every edge comes from seeing what everyone else ignores. If you found this breakdown helpful, tap the like button, subscribe, and lock in with us for daily analysis. More picks, more insight, and more edges are coming your way. I'll catch you in the next one.